You know what sucks? Evictions. Yeah, I have a tenant who hasn't paid in a couple of months. Excuse after excuse and still no payment. Started the process of eviction, I'm exhausted. Let's face it, evictions are one of the most challenging and costly experiences a landlord can face. A single eviction can easily cost you about $10,000. It's not in just money, but in stress, time, and sleepless nights. And I've been in the business for about 6 years now. And while most of the experiences have been positive, the painful lessons from evictions are going to stick with you. So today I want to share a candid and detailed story about 2 particularly costly evictions that I recently faced, how they unfolded, and the legal and emotional damages that are involved, and most importantly, how you can avoid them, and how you can avoid these situations through better tenant screening and relationship building. So this is a deep dive into the eviction process, the mindset you need to have when things go wrong, and practical advice on screening tenants effectively. So whether you're a seasoned landlord or you're just starting out, I hope this helps you navigate the difficult realities of eviction and come out stronger and smarter on the other side. You know, over these 6 years, I've had very few evictions, but the ones I've had were painful and costly. And recently I went through 2 that cost me about $25,000 and $15,000 respectively. These experiences weren't just about lost rent or legal fees. They were stories of full human complexity, deception, and frustration. One case involved renting to a lady who seemed perfect on paper. You know, she had a son who was helping her with the application. Everything checked out at first glance. We thought it was great. We even signed the lease at her kitchen table. I don't do that anymore, but soon after it became clear that the son who was not on the lease was living in the unit and was not going to be added to the lease despite my many requests. Rent payments started late and then quickly stopped altogether. It turned out that not only was the mother not living there then, but she was never living there. It was mostly the son using the unit. His background and behavior were a lot different from what was initially presented, and I was misled multiple times, which was a tough pill to swallow because I pride myself on strong people skills and the ability to read people. This individual was a con artist, and I was tricked a bunch of times. The eviction process was long and costly, but it was also a huge learning experience for me. Eviction laws can vary from state to state, and some states are really tenant-friendly, making the process easy, and some like New Jersey, it's really tough. You have to have a 10-day grace period before it's considered late. After those 10 days, landlords you have to have a 5-day period before it's even considered late. And then after that 5-day period, then you're allowed to proceed through a certain direction, proceed through a certain method. Within 3 days of being late, we can do a pay or quit notice. This time frame may differ from state to state, but the eviction process begins with sending this 3-day notice, which is a formal notice to the tenant that they must either pay the overdue rent or vacate the property within 3 days. This notice has to be served by a marshal, by a sheriff, and only after it's served, after those 3 days, does the timeline start counting. So for landlords under an LLC in New Jersey, you can't serve the eviction notice yourself. You have to hire an attorney. This adds cost and time to the process, but it's legally required. Typically, the process from sending the notice to having the sheriff serve it takes at least 10 to 12 days, and that's after waiting 30 days for a court appearance. If the tenant doesn't comply with the 3-day notice, the landlord's got to file a summary process claim in court. Now, it's not absolutely mandatory that we file this notice if they're not paying, if they're being evicted for non-payment or breach of lease. The tenant has the right to respond to the claim, though, and the court date is set. Then the sheriff's got to serve the tenant with the summons and the complaint. The timeline here can vary, but it takes several weeks, sometimes months, before the court hearing. So now you get to court, you present your evidence like unpaid rent, ledgers, your lease agreements, and any communications that you've had with the tenant. If the court rules in your favor, you receive a judgment for possession. However, even after the judgment, the tenant might have some time before they have to vacate, and they may even just be able to pay the rent that day, and then the whole process has to start all over when they stop paying again. And if the tenant still doesn't vacate, then the sheriff enforces the eviction by physically removing the tenant and their belongings. This final step is stressful and costly, especially if the tenant decides that they're going to resist or damage your property. After going through these experiences, I did a lot of reflection on what I could have done differently. Tenant screening is the best defense against costly evictions, but even with some of the best screening, there are a lot of situations that are just going to surprise you. In this case, looking back on it, the biggest red flag was the son, who was just way too involved, then started living in the unit without being on the lease. And I learned something other than the primary applicant is usually involved in the leasing process, especially if they're driving the car. You need to know who they are and consider the background checks on them as well. It's easy to want to give the benefit of the doubt to people, and I really try hard not to become jaded or unfairly prejudiced against applicants based on gut feelings alone. But this experience kind of made me dig a little deeper when someone outside the official application is heavily involved. Now, here are some practical tenant screening tips based on my experience. You want to do this right away, but spend longer than you think is necessary for upfront screening and conversations. Look beyond your credit scores and understand the full credit profile, debt to income, and spending habits. Have honest conversations about debt and income before running credit checks to avoid wasting applicants' time, credit inquiries, and money. Use social media and other available tools to verify applicants' story and lifestyle, and pay attention to who's helping that person and representing the application process during the process. Credit scores alone don't always tell the whole story. For example, someone with a 700 credit score can have high debt and miss payments and be riskier than someone with a 600 score who has low debt and steady income. I look for a debt-to-income ratio under 35% for applicants with credit scores below 700 and up to 40% if their score is 700. Bank statements are especially useful to see actual income and spending habits, and it's better to have someone making $60,000 a year who saves money and pays bills on time than someone who's making $140,000 but is living paycheck to paycheck with high credit card balances. It comes down to mindset. Evictions and tenant issues are emotionally taxing. When you receive the bad news, like a tenant stops paying the rent or there's property damage, it's natural to feel ashamed, frustrated, or even worried about your finances. Early in this journey, I often worried about whether or not I had enough money to fix problems or cover losses. Over time, I developed a mindset of resilience and problem solving. I don't freak out anymore because I've been through enough situations that I know I can either solve the problem myself or find the right people to help me. Don't be the guy, be the guy who knows the guy. I rely heavily on my network of professionals with skills opposite of mine, showing up to help others without expectation. That's what makes others more willing to help out when I need it. When I'm faced with a crisis, I focused on gathering all the information I need, asking the right questions, and making decisions calmly and confidently. This mindset has been a game changer in managing the ups and downs of real estate investing. People first philosophy in landlording helps you build relationships. It's not just about properties and numbers. It's about people. Tenants are human beings with stories, needs, and emotions. If you treat them with kindness, empathy, and respect, it's not only the right thing to do, but it's also the smart business plan. My approach is to see tenants as employees and build personal relationships with them. I strive to be known as Bud, the property manager behind the business, rather than just a faceless landlord company. This means you got to be approachable and communicative, setting clear boundaries and expectations. You kindly help tenants through tough times if possible. You encourage open communication and avoid surprises. This philosophy will lead you to longer-term tenants who respect your property and relationship. Yeah, evictions are still going to happen, but you have to build trust and treat tenants well. Those situations are fewer and less painful. Let's talk about balancing your boundaries and kindness, because many landlords struggle with how to be firm and enforce rules while also being kind. Emotional intelligence is key here. You can be clear about rules like rent deadlines or property maintenance without being an ass. You don't have to be harsh or rude. For example, I recently texted a tenant who was behind on rent, explaining that lack of communication to lead the next steps, and when I asked for an update to work through it together. This approach kept the lines of communications open and preserved our respect. And you know what? They paid. Effective tenant screening is the best way to minimize your eviction risk. And here's a detailed look at my tenant screening process. We do have a 10-step process at 2nd Street Property Management. So our initial conversations, before we pull any credit reports, we have a 5 to 10 minute conversation to understand the income, the debts, the situations. This is going to save you time and protect their credit history. Social media checks, you look at their Facebook and Instagram profile to see if their online presence, compares to what they told you. Then you perform a soft background check early on to screen any red flags. You basically have them fill out a questionnaire. Then you do credit and financial verification, because if everything looks good, then I pull the report and request bank statements, pay stubs, or other documents to verify their income and spending, and then I call their boss. You do their debt-to-income analysis. You can use ChatGPT for this, right? Get referrals and history. I prefer tenants who come through referrals from other tenants because they tend to be more reliable and community-oriented. How many applicants are you going to screen? For most properties, especially in desirable areas, referrals fill vacancies really quickly. But for more challenging properties in those areas and less desirable locations, it might be dozens of applicants before finding the right fit. I recently had over 150 inquiries on a single property over 3 weeks. Verbally screened 25, showed it to 5 or 6, and rented it once, and now it's back on the market because they just ghosted us. Marketing a rental property isn't just about posting ads, it's about building trust and connection from the first interaction. I use Buildium, which posts to apartments.com, Zillow, Facebook Marketplace, and all that kind of stuff, so that you can be the real person behind the listing. Here's how I approach the leasing. I use friendly conversational language in ads, very conversational and casual, to show that I'm approachable. I offer immediate personal responses to inquiries and build rapport. Now, you can't always answer the phone on the first ring, but you can always call them back. I encourage conversations about applicant stories and situations, and then I use digital lease signing to keep the process professional and safe. A lot of landlords feel pressure to create distance from tenants, but being human and authentic is a competitive advantage. People want to rent from somebody they can trust and relate to, not a faceless corporation. You want to set boundaries, you always want to protect yourself. While I believe in kindness and relationship building, it's also essential to set your clear boundaries. You need to protect your personal space and your personal safety. I used to have tenants sign leases at the kitchen table and in the rental, but I've since moved lease signings to public places, or mostly I use digital tools to avoid exposing myself during a hostile situation, potentially. Like, we use a business mailing address, an office, instead of a home address. That's definite. Collect rent electronically or via drop-off locations rather than in person. We use Pay Near Me. Move tenants to neutral locations or properties when necessary if you got to meet them. Real estate investing isn't just a job for me, it's a way to create freedom and build legacy. After years of working as a police officer and military guy, I realized that owning real estate was the key to my financial independence, because it really allowed me to generate steady income, build equity and wealth. I can work with my family and pass on skills, control my own destiny without answering to anybody. Passionate about sharing what I learned with others is why I started this channel, especially new investors. So real estate's a vehicle that can take you to a lot of different places, but it requires patience, humility, and continuous learning. If you're not learning, you're dying in this business. I encourage you to seek a mentor. I had one, I still have a coach, and build a relationship with trusted advisors. Nobody succeeds alone. Helping others and learning from experiences creates a cycle where everybody rises together. As a mentor once told me, your goal should be that your ceiling is everyone else's floor and their floor is everyone else's ceiling. Speaking of which, if you do need some help with your rental property investing, do me a favor, go to budevans.com and book a strategy session now. I will help you. It is completely free and no obligation. I like talking to people. Yes, I do have a mentorship program. This is not a sales pitch. I'm not kidding. This business is more about collaboration than it is competition, and I am not looking for your money. If you are a veteran or you are a first responder, please, you want to get into real estate, call me, budevans.com. Book a strategy session now. Based on my experiences and my conversations with other landlords, here are some critical lessons that are going to help you avoid eviction nightmares. Screen tenants thoroughly. Spend extra time up front. Verify income, debts, credit history, and identity. Don't rush this step. Know everybody involved. If there's somebody other than the primary applicant, they're going to be heavily involved in the process. Find out who they are. Get background checks on them if you need to. And then build relationships. Tenants are people, not just rent checks. You got to have that open communication to reduce surprises and increase cooperation. Make sure you set those clear boundaries though. Be kind but firm with the rules and expectations. Protect your personal space and professional boundaries. Be prepared for the eviction process. Understand your state's eviction laws, timelines, and costs. Hire good attorneys when necessary. Maintain a resilient mindset. Problems are going to come up. Stay calm, gather information, lean on your network, and make decisions confidently. And use technology. Digital lease signing, online rent payments, social media screening can really streamline your processes and improve safety. So here's some final thoughts. Eviction's a costly and stressful part of rental property ownership, but it's not inevitable. By investing time and care into tenant screening and relationship building and process management, you can dramatically reduce your risk and build a successful and sustainable rental business. Remember, real estate investing is as much about people as it is properties. So when you treat your tenants with respect and kindness while maintaining your boundaries, you're going to create that win-win situation we strive for. And that really benefits everybody. If you're a landlord or aspiring investor, take these lessons to heart, learn from my experiences and mistakes, avoid the pitfalls I made, and keep moving forward with humility, determination. The freedom and fulfillment of real estate offers, it's worth the effort, trust me. And to continue your journey and explore your resources, connect with mentors and peers, and always keep learning. Your next great tenant and your next great success could be just around the corner. Tenant eviction, yeah, it happens. If you're prepared, you can get around it. Again, if you are a first responder or you are a veteran and you need some help with this process, reach out to budevans.com and book your no obligation free strategy session now. And until the next video, aim high.